Hi everyone, so here we are with some not completely pleasant news about The Division. Now, essentially the endgame content has had to have a bit of a nerf thrown at it by Ubisoft. So what happened? Well, on Friday, a group of gamers announced that they basically completed the game. They got gold items, etc. Now, these gold items are normally available through Phoenix credits. Now, these Phoenix credits are essentially a way that you can buy the best gear in the game, or blueprints to craft the best gear in the game. Now, what went wrong was this. The amount of credits you got for killing a boss in the Darkzone area was anything up to 10 credits. Now, a blueprint costs an average of, say, 80 credits to 100 credits, and there's normally 3 or 4 bosses available within a given area, probably 3 on average. So you can see that if you're getting 10 credits and there were 3 bosses in an area, you could clear an area in maybe 5 to 10 minutes. You could very, very quickly farm the necessary credits to unlock all of the best gear. Now, obviously, this was absolutely game-breaking, really. If, at the end of the day, 4 days after the game has been released, people are max levelling what the game has to offer, they've pretty much buggered it up. So, what did Ubisoft do? Well, they really had no choice but to completely nerf this down to what they probably originally had on their design sheet. So essentially now you get between 1 and 3 credits for killing a boss, or at random. Much better in my opinion. Now, this has split the player base somewhat. Nobody likes being told that something that was expected, because of gamers having done this, has now been changed, and that essentially progression at level 30 is going to be much slower. The thing is, the developers never intended it to work this way. Now, I wouldn't describe it as a bug. What I would describe it as a testing feature. Essentially, when they were testing the endgame content to see what the progression would be like, they've ramped it up by 3 times the normal amount, so that essentially when devs are testing, things move much quicker for them. In an hour, they can test the equivalent of maybe 3 to 4 hours worth of content in the end zone. Obviously, for whatever reason, this bug, call it a feature, whatever, snuck through into the final game. Now, again, this may or may not have been deliberate. We know from the history of MMOs that the upper tiers of content generally has these sorts of things going on, and nearly always, including games like World of Warcraft, Champions Online, and so on, they've all done this. The first couple of weeks, there are ways through the system that will allow you to very quickly acquire all of the endgame credits. You can go back over any MMO you like, you will always find that there, and Destiny was no different. So, in many respects, I don't think we should be calling the developers out too much for this one. Maybe it was a mistake, maybe it was just something they left in there for the gamers who had been beta testing this game in private testing for Ubisoft, just to ramp up in the endgame content. There's all sorts of funny little reasons why these things happen. Now, the main way that Ubisoft wanted you to actually acquire these Phoenix credits is through the daily missions. Now, these are a bit grindy. You can do each one once and you get around 15 credits. Now, that's fine. At the end of the day, the progression of the game certainly shouldn't have been hang out in the dark zone, killing boss mobs and simply leveling up your gear that way. That never really felt like a particularly compelling game to me. Having the much harder content, those missions that can take anything up to an hour for you and a well-built team to kind of wade your way through, well, that's really the challenge of the endgame content. I don't see this running around in circles within the dark zone, which is what people were essentially doing, clearing boss after boss after boss, and then starting the loop again. That doesn't exactly sound like gameplay to me. That sounds like a treadmill. So anyway, Ubisoft have made this change. The player base are pretty annoyed about it, or at least those ones that had got to level 30 were seeing the number of credits they had and then saw the number of credits drop. Me personally, I've been in the dark zone for around 48 hours now. I'm not that bothered either way. You know, it really doesn't actually matter. I would rather have a game where we're all able to progress at a similar kind of rate than find that for those people coming to the dark zone in a week's time, in a month's time, that those of us who've been here for a while and been taking advantage of these extra credits essentially have completely out-leveled all of the content for everybody else. It would be a situation where you're going to have people then sitting around going, I'm bored, I've got nothing to do, this game's too easy, because effectively they max leveled their way through the game within, 48 hours. That's no good for anyone. It's certainly no good for the lifeblood of this game or being able to bring in new gamers later. Ubisoft had to make this change, and I'm glad they made it as quickly as they did. At the end of the day, for every hour that went by, more and more people were going to be able to hit this max level and effectively destroy the game for themselves more than anything else.